My topic for this morning, in the remaining time of this service, is taken from the book of Matthew chapter 25, verse 14, and I'm ministering on the subject, stewarding our talents. Stewarding our talents. When you talk about talents, I think there's no better scripture that is very self-descriptive than this particular one, Matthew chapter 25. Now, I'm just going to read that, and then we'll just jump right into the message for this morning. Verse 14. Are you in verse 14? Yeah. You used to talk to me when I used to be here. Are you in verse 14? Good. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents of money, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received the 5 talents went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 more. So also the one with the 2 talents gained 2 more. But the one who had received the 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received the 5 talents brought the other 5. Master, he said, you have entrusted me with 5 talents. See, I have gained how many more? 5 more. His master replied, what did his master say? Read with me. Well done. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then, verse 22, the man with the 2 talents also came and said, Master, he said, you entrusted me with how many talents? 2 talents. See, I have gained 2 more. What did his master say? Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. And then verse 24. Now the man who had received just 1 talent came. Master, he said, I knew that you're a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown, gathering where you have not scattered seed. So, verse 25, what did he say? So I was afraid and went out and hid your talent in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. Then verse 26, what did his master say? His master replied, So you knew that I harvest and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received back with interest. In other words, there's no excuse. Are you with me? The least you could have done is you have put it in a fixed deposit account. That's what the master is saying. Take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For everyone who has will be given more and will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken from him. Verse 30, and throw that worthless servant outside, where? Into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Father, we ask that you will open our hearts and our minds, Lord, to receive your word to us today. In Jesus' name. Stewarding your talents. Now, it is interesting when you read this particular parable of the talents, there's almost a similar story or a similar parable that Christ actually gave, but that you'll find it in Luke chapter 19. However, the one in Luke chapter 19 is actually not the same. But it also just talks something about stewardship. The big difference with the one in Luke chapter 19, if we had time, we'll have turned there, but we don't have enough time to do that. The one in Luke chapter 19 basically talks about the talent of the pounds. In some versions, that's what they call it, the talent of the pounds or the miners. And in that particular one, everybody, all the servants that were there, received an equal amount. Are you with me? All right, because, and I think that is there for us, yet they all received an equal amount, but when the master came back, some of the dishes are very similar. When the master came back, he still required an account, and the ones who brought an increase, they received more. The one who did not bring an increase, whatever he had, he even lost, and he was actually judged for it. So some details may be similar, but I think it just reminds us that there are some things that we have received equally. Are you with me? Whereas we have talents and gifts that they're not equal, but there are certain things that are equal to everybody. For example, we all have 24 hours. None of us has 26. I wish I had 26 sometimes. All right, we all have 24 hours, whether you like it or not, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're educated, whether you're not educated, whether you keep time or you're an African timer. All of us have 24 hours in a day. Salvation, we have all received equally. There is no salvation for the rich. There's no salvation for the poor. The same blood that saves somebody who is poor is the same blood that saves somebody who is extremely wealthy. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And that's why you remember when I was here, I used to remind us that we are all sheep. In God's economy, there are only sheep. Your neighbor is a sheep. The person next to you, it doesn't matter how good looking they are, they're just another sheep. Are you hearing? Because salvation is equal, and we shall all give an account of the gospel that we have received. And I believe Luke chapter 19 teaches that there are things that we have received equally. However, in the parable that is before us, in Matthew 25, the parable of the talents. Now, of course, talents at that particular culture, at that particular time, referred to a certain amount of money. Are you with me? So now the story, we are told that a certain man, of course, was getting ready to go on a faraway journey. So he gathers 3 of his servants. Now, please, and I want you to understand this. When the Bible there talks about servants, actually these were slaves. Are you with me? So they are not just people that he has employed. These are actually his slaves. They do his bidding. They belong to the master. So understand, they have no rights from the word go. So he's giving people talents or money, but these people have actually no rights. So it's not that they have earned something. So this is not a salary they're receiving. They are, whatever they receive, the guy who receives the 5 talents, he's actually holding it in trust on behalf of his master. Let's begin right there. I think for all of us to understand that we do not have our own rights in God's kingdom. That whatever you and I have received, we only receive it in trust. It is actually not ours. Are you with me? You're very quiet, CITAM Woodley. It is. I know sometimes you want to feel like we're in charge. The truth is, whatever you have received does not really belong to you. You're actually holding it in trust on behalf of our master, one who is even greater than the one who is in this story, and that is our God in heaven. So notice, so the master gives every one of them, but he gives them different talents, different amount of money, as it were, according to everybody's ability. Are you with me? That means that we all have different abilities. And guess what? Our master, our Father in heaven, gives us talents in keeping with our different abilities. That is why it is foolish of me to be jealous of you because of your talent. It doesn't make sense. Are you with me? But understand, to whom much is given, much is expected. So that is why it is not it's not a wise thing for me to desire your gift. Because you'll actually have more responsibility than I do. So if I have only received three talents, for example, my level of responsibility is actually less than you as who has received 5. So do not envy people who you feel have received more, because more means more responsibility. Actually, more means more work. Because whoever has more and whoever brings an increase only receives more responsibility. Are you with me? But we receive our gifts depending on our different abilities. And that is why, as God's people, we must learn to accommodate one another, knowing that we cannot all do the same things. There are some of us who are good singers. They can sing. They can sing until the birds come home. Are you with me? There are some of us who honestly, you only sing to praise the Lord, and just keep it that way. Just don't stand in front of people to try to sing. Don't. Because it will become an offense. There are some of us who can preach a good sermon. Some of us can never preach a good sermon. Because that's not what God has called you to do. Are you with me? I normally tell people, listen, you put me in a church, I can teach anytime. You can wake me up in the middle of the night, and in the middle of my dream, I can come up with a sermon. Because that's what God has given me to do. But don't put me on a crusade ground and expect me to do what Reinhard Bonke used to do. That's not my gifting. Are you with me? Because that's what he was given. One of the things, and of course, Reinhard Bonnke just died not long ago. One of the things I came to respect about Reinhard Bonnke is that he kept to his lane for years. By the way, that is one man. Reinhard Bonnke did not have many messages as a preacher. He only had one message. One message. I'll never forget when they were dedicating the sanctuary in Karen. All right, and he was, in fact, I think that was the last time he was here. And that time he was ailing, and he came for a church dedication. The president was there, and he comes in there, and he couldn't even stand. That time he was already ailing, so he actually preached sitting down. Now, can you imagine Reinhard Bonnke sitting down? It tells you that the guy was really in a bad state. But in a church dedication, you would think he would bring a message of dedication. He preached like he was in a crusade ground. Because that's all God gave him to do. And in a church dedication, people still got born again. Because that's what he stuck to his lane. Are you with me? Because you see, the challenge is that sometimes I envy what you have. Or I think I can do what you do better than you. The truth is, we are all gifted differently, and we must learn to accommodate one another. We must learn to celebrate one another when it comes down to it. So when you do something well, it is my prerogative, it is my responsibility to celebrate you and give you a high five and tell you have done well. As opposed to me feeling a sense of envy and jealousy. And unfortunately, sometimes that's how we survive. People become jealous, people become envious of one another simply because you think the other one has more limelight than you. The devil is a liar. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And we begin undermining one another. We begin pulling one another down. We begin talking about one another because let me tell you something I have come to discover in life. You can never undermine your way to blessing. Are you hearing me? You can never connive your way to blessing. God is not a fool. He sees the hearts of people. Let God be the one to lift you. Let God be the one to bless you. The responsibilities that we have according to our abilities. So the first thing you notice in this story, they all received a different gift or a different measure of talent. The second thing I think you need to notice in this, of course, the master goes away, so he's not there to monitor their everyday, but every one of them, as they received these talents, remember, the talents do not belong to them, the talents belong to their master. They are holding it in trust for their master. Why? Because when the master comes, notice, they have to give an account. Every one of them have to stand and give an account before the master and say, with what you gave me, this is what I did, and this is my return. Now, if you're really to think about it like a businessman. If you're to think of God as a business person, God is a business person. He invests in us. Did you know that you're God's investment? Are you with me? He has invested certain things in you. And guess what? He will come back because a good businessman expects a return on investment. Now, there are some of us who are good investments. Some of us are not very good investments, as you'll discover in that story. God will come and demand an account. What did you do with the talents that I gave you? Now, I have not even bothered trying to describe talents and spiritual giftings. That's another whole subject for another day. But suffice it to say that every one of us, whether 5 or 1, every one of us has received something. And every one of us will be held accountable. Now, and when you're held accountable, when you stand before the master, you will not give an account of your neighbor. You will give an account for yourself. Notice. And everyone also, the guy who had 5 comes and he says, listen, this is what I did, and here is 5 more. I have doubled your investment. That's awesome, isn't it? I mean, who would even want to invest in something that gives you a double, as long as it's not a pyramid scheme? All right? Who wouldn't want? Because we a business person is somebody who invests in something that is profitable. The second guy comes and says, listen, you gave me how many? You gave me 2, and here is my return on your investment in me. And both of them receive a commendation, and he says, well done, good and faithful servants. And he tells them, as it were, now notice this scenery. Notice where this is happening. It seems to be happening at the judgment throne of God, because that's a picture that we find there. Are you with me? Because it says, well done, good and faithful servant. And then he says, you have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. And then he says, come and share in your master's happiness. In other words, remember, if these guys were slaves, the master is actually now welcoming them to reign with him. Get this point. Notice. All right? He's saying, you have done well. You are slaves, but now I'm inviting you to change position. Did you know that we will reign with Christ? But we will only reign with Christ in that millennium kingdom depending on what you'll have brought back. Are you with me? So notice, so for the guy who of course brings an increase, he is blessed, receives and changes his position. The master changes his position. He says, come and share in your master's happiness. Now, the guy who has 1 talent comes and says, it's like this. You know when people start, it's like this. You know where that is going. He says, first of all, notice the first thing he does, he gives an excuse. He says, I knew you are a hard man. You reap where you do not sow. In other words, you get whatever you want. I know you. And then he says, because of that, I was afraid. So what did I do? I went and dug a hole, put your talent in the ground, and then now he's there proudly presenting whatever had been buried. All right? Saying, here is what you gave me charge of. Now, the master is ticked off. He's angry with this guy. And then the master tells him, now notice, I want you to notice the words of the master. The master says, you wicked. I want you to know, because this is where it gets tricky. Are you with me? Remember, we are talking about talents, but this is where it gets tricky. Because it says, you wicked, lazy servant. Now, if he had said, you lazy servant, would have sounded better. So what has wickedness got to do with stewarding my talent? Are you noticing that? What has that got to do with nothing? I mean, I would have protested if I was the guy. I would have said, like, seriously, I'm a good person. It's only that I was afraid. I have not done anything wrong. But he says, you wicked lazy servant, so you knew. So the master says, your assessment of me was right. In other words, you had the truth. You know the truth. All right? But I'm not receiving your excuse. So verse 27 says, well, then you should have acted. So he says, this is the least you could have done. You could have taken my money and deposited with the bankers, not bury it in a hole. In other words, the least you could have done. By the way, just open a savings account. At least it will earn a minimal interest. Any bankers who are here? Isn't it? Even if you don't touch the money for the next few years and it's just in that, it will earn something. It may not be much. So the master was saying, there are no excuses. You must bring an increase. Are you with me? That even if you don't go and engage with business, even if you don't go and engage in something profitable, but there is no excuse, if you have received something, you must bring an increase. That's what he's saying. So the master, then he says, take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. Sounds unfair. For everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. But whoever does not have, even what he has, he will lose it. And then verse 30 now, look at the judgment of this guy. All right? And throw that worthless, something worthless is something that has no worth. In other words, this guy is useless. He's a waste of oxygen, basically. That's what he means. He should not have been born because he's just taking up space for nothing. Not my words, the Bible. Worthless. It says, and take that worthless servant outside, where? Notice. Into darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing. Where is this place where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth? I'm going to say it loudly. I know you're afraid of going there, even me. Hell. Are you noticing something here that actually has been an intrigue to theologians for a long time? All right? Notice the picture that we are given here in this parable is the judgment here is an eternal judgment. All right? Now, because the place where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth, there's only one place we know. And that is a place called hell. And hell is a place of eternal punishment. I like what one person says that if you get to hell where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, even if you don't have teeth, teeth will be provided, Right? So one way or the other, you will gnash your teeth, right? But I want you to notice with me, what has stewardship of talent got to do with my eternal judgment? Are you with me? Because we would think, and sometimes this is how we normally kind of preach it, that there are some of us, because we will not use our talents, when we get to heaven, we will be very poor. That's usually what we say. Are you with me? That if you don't use your talent here, you're not gaining anything up there. So in heaven, whilst one person will be having a mansion, you'll be the one who will be the housekeeper or something like that. That's because we kind of, that's the level that we normally try to just play it at. But when I look at this, when it comes to stewardship of talents, it is tied to your eternal destiny. So then we have to try and understand what exactly is Jesus Christ trying to teach us. Now, we have to go back now and look at the conversation between the master and the guy who had one talent. All right? Now, first and foremost, the guy who had one talent, here is the danger that I believe also Jesus Christ was trying to get us to understand. The danger is this, that sometimes, now I want you to understand that this guy who had one talent is not that there was something wrong with him, or Jesus didn't like him, or the master did not like him. It's just everybody receives according to their ability. But remember, the account is the same for everybody. Everybody must give an account. Now, the danger sometimes is that sometimes when you are not as gifted, maybe when you are somebody who doesn't possess too many talents, but remember, even if you don't have many, at least you have some. So there is nobody who is too poor not to possess a talent. Are you with me? However, remember that we are all different. So this guy with one talent, the danger is this, and the danger for us, and this is something we have to be cautious about, is that sometimes when I don't feel like I am too gifted, sometimes when I feel like other people are more gifted than I am, the tendency is to bury the gift. Because then I say, well, there's a pastor Pastor Carita will preach. There's a discipleship class, those guys are gifted, they will teach. There's in fact, we have people who are gifted. Me, I'm not gifted. There's a teacher in Sunday school. Are you with me? So the tendency is to say, by the way, this is CITAM Woodley. There's a lot of people, thousands of people here. I'm sure all the departments are taken care of. So let me bury mine. That's the tendency. Are you with me? And so disengage and say, well, other people can do it. In fact, you kind of create this, whatever in your mind, that you will not make a difference anyway. They will not notice you anyway. Are you with me? But what you forget is that when you bury that gift, when you bury that talent, you will not have an excuse before God. He says, because I don't engage my gift, we don't engage our gift to be noticed. Nobody may pat you on the back to say, hey, you have done a good job. Nobody may smile at you. Nobody may come and congratulate you. But what you know is that even when they don't notice, my Father, the Master, he's paying attention. Are you with me? And that's where the crux of the matter is. That I know whom I am serving. I know whom I am doing this for. Whether I have one or I have 5. So listen, even before we go to that conversation in just a short while, you don't have an excuse. There is something you can do. Okay, because turn to your neighbor and tell them there's something you can do. Everybody, there is something you can do, and you are expected by the master, not the pastors. Because sometimes we think it's about it has nothing to do with the pastors. It has nothing to do with the leadership of the church. You know, one of the conversations sometimes you hear people saying, and I've had this sometimes in some of our circles in CITAM, where people say, but you know the pastors are paid. So then they can do this thing. Me, I'm just a volunteer. By the way, can I help somebody here? Did you know that in God's economy, there are no volunteers? The word volunteer doesn't appear in the Bible. God deals not with volunteers. He deals with workers, laborers. What is a laborer? A laborer is somebody whose level of responsibility is higher than a volunteer. It is somebody like if you have a job, you're a laborer, isn't it? You expect to receive a paycheck. The only we know for us, our paycheck is not here. But you're a laborer. So when God looks at it, remember what he said, the harvest is plentiful, but the volunteers are few. He said, the laborers are few. So he is expecting you to be a laborer. And by the way, in the church, I've always said that I think we need to change our mindset from volunteers to laborers, to workers, people who engage. Because when you're a laborer, you do know when you're a volunteer, normally you work out of convenience. Usually. If I'm volunteering something, I will come when I can be able to. I'll come when I have time. If it rains, I won't show up. If it snows, I'm not going to come. Okay, thank God it doesn't snow in Kenya. But if it gets cold, I might decide, well, I can do other things. In other words, I do things out of my convenience. But a laborer is somebody who does something out of conviction, out of responsibility. So I normally ask this. Tomorrow is Monday. Some of you, of course, are employed. You're supposed to be in the office by 8 or 8:39, whatever the case may be. How many of you will be there on time at work? How many of you will be, that is if you want to keep your job, you must be there on time. Why? Because of the level of responsibility tells you that I must be there on time because I am a worker. By the way, did you know that the same rules apply even in the kingdom of God? So then I don't come to teach Sunday school when I have time. My goodness. I don't come to usher when I have time or because it didn't rain. I show up whether anybody comes to church on Sunday morning or not. It is my job to stand there at the door because that's what I signed up to. That's what God called me to. Are you with me? Whether the pastor notices me or not and says thank you, it doesn't matter. I showed up, I did my responsibility so that when I give an account, I will say, this is what you gave me, these are the returns. So look at this conversation. So the guy with the 1 talent, so he says the first thing, you notice what he says? He says, I knew you're a hard man. So he says, so I was afraid. So the first thing that we realize is that a lot of times we will not engage, we will not steward our talents the way we're supposed to because of fear. Now, fear is the antithesis of faith. Are you with me? Now, for you to serve this eternal kingdom means that you must have faith in an unseen God Are you with me? There must be a belief inside of you. Now, the fear here that we are talking about is not just that superficial emotion that we normally feel, like when you see a cat. Okay, some of you are afraid of cats. Or the superficial thing, the emotion that you feel when you see a snake, for example. That's not the kind of fear that is being referred to here. This fear that is being referred to here is a certain disposition of the heart. In the same way that you may have a disposition of faith, you can also have a disposition of fear. And fear usually will be the antithesis of faith. So the reason why we do what we do, the reason why I engage my talent is because I have faith. I have faith in an unseen God who will hold me accountable. Are you with me? And before this God, I will give an account. But I want you to notice, so now the master comes and says, and he labels this guy, he actually tells him, you wicked and lazy servant. Now, if you put that now in that eschatological context, it suggests to us that as far as, for example, looking at it now in the throne room of God, while he is judging and separating the sheep and the goats, then this guy will have fallen into the category of goats. Are you with me? Now, remember, we are talking about talents. What has that got to do with my faith? But in other words, what Jesus was trying to help us to understand, that the reason why a lot of people will not engage their gifts and their talents, that what God has put inside of them, is because really deep inside, they are not people of faith. Are you with me? Now, I'm struggling with that bit, just trying to grapple with it. And I've looked at certain commentaries and people try to go around the issue, but that is actually the best way to look at it. He says the reason why, because if you really know your God, if you're really connected to the God of the Bible, if you really had an experience with him, what he was suggesting was that you have no option but to use that which he has entrusted to you. Jeremiah was one perfect example of somebody who had gifts and talents. He was a prophet. Jeremiah one time, because of the attacks and all the things that he went through, preaching and nobody was hearing the message. And the guy was discouraged and despondent. No wonder he's the one who wrote Lamentations. He kept lamenting. The guy was depressed half the time. So one time he comes to God and he says, Lord, you deceived me and I was deceived. Like, who tells that to God? In other words, you lied to me and I fell for it. And then he says, in fact, I have decided, I have concluded, I will no longer preach in your name. Remember, that's what he said, isn't it? He said, leave me alone. I will not preach in your name. I will not engage anymore. But then he said this. He says, unfortunately, the fire in me is like fire. The word in me is like fire shut up in my bones. In other words, I can't keep quiet. That no matter what I go through, no matter the challenges, no matter who doesn't respond to this word, he says, I can't keep quiet because I'm a man of faith. In other words, I cannot separate my faith from serving you. Because in God's kingdom, there are no redundant people. God does not retrench. My goodness. He does not retrench anybody. He expects you to show up. That is, if you have faith in him, he says, show up. And by the way, there's a gospel, I think, that we have preached that has been very misleading for people. We think and believe that the purpose of Jesus coming and dying on the cross is for our comfort, so that we can be blessed. And of course, I'm not saying that he doesn't bless his people, so that I can have a good car, so that I can live in a nice mansion with 5 roofs and have a dog called Puppy. So that I will not have to. Let me tell you something. God's priority in your life is not for your comfort. God's priority for your life, my life, is his will. And sometimes his will, listen to me, sometimes his will take you to very uncomfortable places. Sometimes his will force you to wake up in the morning when you don't want to. To show up in church to serve people who are very ungrateful. Can we talk in this place? Because for me, I'm interested in, he's not after my comfort. So I don't wake up. Let me tell you, I'm a pastor. I can tell you, I've been a pastor for a long time. I don't want to come to church every Sunday. I wish I had options like you, some of you. Sometimes I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking, God, like seriously, I mean, why can't I just sleep like everybody, every normal person? Even me, I want to sleep in. Even me, surely, God, I mean, like, even me, I want to have breakfast in bed. Sometimes I wake up, and then I have to remember, I'm the pastor. I wish one day, Pastor Carita, we can wake up in the morning, and you just send a message, text message, to the people, tell them, by the way, me, I woke up, and I wish we could do that. Say, yeah, I woke up in the morning. Say, for today, CITAM Woodley Mujisot. Just read your Bible, do something. I wish we could do that. Because we are human. But then, in sickness, in health, whether we collapse on the pulpit, like sometimes we do, he's not after my comfort. He's after accomplishing his will for my life. But here is the good news. And I want to finish with the good news. Here is the good news. Our blessings, our breakthroughs, our eternal blessings are tied to our proper stewardship of the talents that he has given us. I bet you, listen, that if you truly engage that which God has put in your heart, and you begin serving him and saying, Lord, I will give it all to you, and I will not spare anything, the first thing that you would notice is that God will increase. Because that's what he did. He will keep increasing you. He will keep expanding you. Are you with me? For example, you ask anybody who has a gift of generosity. The more they give, they can never outgive God. It seems the more you give, in fact, sometimes you're almost trying to get rid of it. The more he pours into you. Why? Because you are being faithful. You're a faithful steward. So the first thing you can expect is that he will increase. The only way I can grow in my teaching ministry is if I teach. I can go to Bible college, and that's good. I can learn and read all the theological books. That's good. I'm just about to graduate with my master's. That's good. However, anybody who has been to college, they will tell you, in Bible school, they will tell you, Bible college will give you all those principles, but for you to grow, you must engage. Are you with me? And whatever you engage in, guess what? God increases. He keeps increasing. He keeps expanding you. You begin discovering gifts you did not even know that you had. You begin discovering abilities you did not even know that were actually inside of you. You begin doing things you never imagined that you could be able to do. One time I remember when I was in CITAM Gong, we had one of our members, and the guy was, that time he was a CEO. And so one time I just felt this unction in my heart. I said, by the way, I want you to preach on a Sunday. And the guy was shocked. He said, no, I've never preached a sermon in my life. So I said, no, you come and preach. And the guy came, did an amazing job and came and preached. And to date, whenever I meet him, he always tells me, you know, Pastor, you're the one who opened this door for me to preach. Because after that, gates just started opening for him. People invite him to come and preach. A CEO in a bank that time. And people would just invite him for him to just come and preach, bring the word of God wherever he went. He never knew he had that gift. Are you with me? Stewardship. Are you with me? Let me tell you, and I conclude with this. There are certain things, certain prayers, we will stop praying when we begin engaging our talents. You know why? Because sometimes we are so driven by the material. Oh, Lord, I need this. Lord, I need that. Lord, I need the other. And that's good. But I believe we should be engaging in a higher level of prayer. Psalm chapter 2, a messianic psalm in the Bible. Ask of me, and I will give the nations for your inheritance, the ends of the earth for your possession. He says, ask, in other words, pray concerning the ends of the earth. Pray concerning the nations that need to come and belong to this fold. He's saying those are the prayers that we should be engaging in. But sometimes we are so caught up in the little things. Engage. Let me tell you, I promise you, there are breakthroughs you will receive simply because you served. There are prayer answers God will just bless you simply because you are faithful. God bless you, CITAM Woodley.